So guys, after the Q&A by BVVD, after the community update, and even the first dev blogs of the next patch or the last patch of the year, we had some answers from questions on the forums from community managers, right? So I wanted to basically bring some of them over here and talk a little bit about it. Of course, there's nothing too big. It's not like a BVVD kind of thing, right? That they confirm that they are working on submarines or something like that. It's not as big as that, right? But it is still pretty interesting. And since we don't have too much information yet for the next update, I decided to do this video. Okay, so if you like this type of video, let me know in the comments, because I am starting to like these things, because we can draw a lot of things from just me and other community managers answering things on the forum, okay? So let's get to it. The first kind of ones that I wanted to actually bring here are ones about subtrees, stack trees, stuff like that, okay? So the first one, guys, is by Def Mister over here, that they were talking a little bit about how subtrees might outgrow the main tech trees, and maybe in the future they could become their own tech tree, or maybe even I'm considering over here that it might even take over the tech tree, right, that they are talking about. And they basically kind of say that maybe it could be considered. Something like crazy like that could be considered, but the problem is that no subtree ever got to that point, especially because they are a subtree. They are a subtree for a reason, because they don't have as many vehicles as they need to be a whole, like, main tech tree, right? That's why they are a subtree. Like Hungary, like Greece, apparently it's coming for the Israelis, etc., right? So at the end of the day, we would need a subtree to be just as big as the main tech tree that the host nation is in, right? And then maybe they will consider something like that. But for now, nothing. Okay, there's a small question here about a Benelux subtree to expand into the blue water and coast water tech trees. You know, basically ships for the Benelux. Nothing to speak of currently, so they're not considering for now, at least on the regards of the community managers, right? Which are not the devs, of course, but they are constantly with talks with the devs. But overall, guys, don't expect the Benelux ships for now for the French. But I would assume that it will come in the future, if there is anything that it's worth to actually add there, right? Another one, it's kind of like it's not even a joke, but it's more akin to that kind of ironic kind of question side of things, because one guy actually asked about Czechoslovakia receiving, for example, a Leopard 2A8 that they're buying, I think they're buying, right, for the USSR tech tree, right? First of all, guys, I think it's really needed an explanation over here. It's kind of ironic, of course, they're just talking about something else, and then, because of that, you know, you might argue that maybe Czechoslovakia would receive a Leopard 2A8 in a subtree for the USSR. But the thing here, he explains that, first of all, Czechoslovakia, they're not a subtree for the USSR, and normally they add vehicles that are Warsaw Pact kind of situation-wise additions, right? So, for example, the Su-25K, the Mi-24D, the M53, 59, L-39. So it's more of a Warsaw Pact thing than something like a subtree properly, right? But the main thing that I wanted to draw from this is that the Czech Leopard 2A8 has no relevance to the Soviet tree. That's the main thing that we can draw from this answer. Guys, you have to think that although just because something could receive, because it's a subtree, because it would make sense politically or in real life, it doesn't mean that it could come in the game. It doesn't mean that it makes sense in the game. So always have that in mind. The main example that I have here is, for example, Indian Rafale for the British. Do the British really need a Rafale? No, they do not. Do they needed the Gripen? Yes, kind of. At the time, they kind of needed, because they were not adding the level of aircraft that the Eurofighter was later, right? So at the time, it was needed that the Gripen was added there. That's why it was added. If the Rafale was needed in the British tech tree to fill a gap, it was going to be added as an Indian vehicle. But it doesn't make much sense. It doesn't need that. So it probably won't have it. That's kind of the idea here, okay? Just because, especially with subtrees, it's not like just, oh, the vehicle could be added, so it should. No, it depends on the nation. It depends if the nation needs it, okay? So that's the main answer that Gaijin is doing. Of course, it's not me talking. That's they're saying, okay? Again, more questions about, these type of things. So, for example, so I think they're gonna to move the Hungary to another tech tree in the future, or remove the Hungarian tech vehicles from Italy. No plans for that. I mean, it's a subtree for a reason, right? And even in a similar term, it's independent Indian tech tree as well. But again, they explain, it's a subtree. It's a subtree for a reason, and it's an objective. Guys, think about that Gaijin is doing this arbitrarily, if that is even a word. They are choosing to do this, okay? It's not like, oh, they added the Indian subtree because, they want to add every single vehicle as the Indian Army and Air Force for the British. It's not that objective. The objective is to, of course, add some Indian vehicles, but the main objective is to fill gaps that the British tech tree had. That's the whole objective of a subtree. So every single subtree you see, that's the main objective. I feel like, in my opinion, with what they say, right? So enough about tech trees. Let's talk a little bit about something else. So the Gripen. So is a top tier AESA jet coming to Sweden just like China and the Eurofighter for other nations? And then he says, please stay tuned to the news for more details on what's coming in this update. We are only a couple of blogs in so far. So he didn't say anything here, right? And so now you bring your, your conspiracy theory hat and take a massive truckload of salt. Guys, I personally have a theory that not every single time, but most of the time, when somebody asks about a vehicle or something, he clearly saying the Gripen E here because it's the AESA, right? They outright just deny, So if they don't deny, normally means that maybe it's coming. So this is a very big conspiracy theory, maybe over here, but maybe the Gripen E could come, this update. Maybe, because they didn't deny. And I've been doing this for a very long time, and every single time somebody asks a real question like this, is an AESA something is coming, a specific tank or something. If it's not coming, it is actually said that it's not coming. So the example that I wanted to give you for that is the Tor. The Tor, as you can see right here, they asked again about the Tor, for the Russians. Of course, the Tor is a Russian system, but it's in the Chinese tech tree. And people are asking for quite a while if the Tor is going to be added. And he basically denied. Nothing new or recent to talk about. It remains a future possibility. So he basically denies for this update, right? So the grip, like the AESA coming for Sweden, he didn't deny. So, and if you go to the forum and look at all these questions, normally, guys, they just outright deny it if they answer, right? So, I don't know. It's a big if. Big if. Conspiracy theory. My own opinion. I'm just guessing over here. But he didn't deny it. So, let's wait and see. But I have a little bit of hope as a Brazilian that I really want the Gripen E because it's our main fighter now that we are getting into service right now, right? Please, for the love of God, add the Gripen E, Gaijin. The Swedes need, the Brazilians need, everybody wants the Gripen E. So, por favor, add the Gripen E, okay? And then there is a question about promising the AESAs for everybody, right? He answers that it is a high priority as well. So, the leaks kind of lead to that they are adding the J-10C, right? That they are adding the Eurofighter Typhoon with an AESA. So it feels like it's a high priority that everybody gets this mechanic, which is the AESA. And one of the only nations that will not have it, if the leaks are true, is Sweden. Okay, so just to have that in mind. But yeah, again, it wasn't promised by the devs that every single nation will have an AESA radar by the end of the year. But it is a high priority, so you can imagine that more and more of these vehicles will be added until everybody has an AESA radar or an electronic scanner array radar, right? Then we have some other minor things, like, for example, no more Hawks planned for this update, which makes sense. We had 2 last patch. Now we have 1 as a premium for Japan, right? So it makes sense. okay? And then there are some answers over here. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but there are a couple of answers over here that are for the Hawk 200 RDA. A lot of people have been asking, where are the guns for it? Because some people claim that he could receive it, but the general answer from Gaijin is that the pod itself, for the gun pod, like the gun itself, cannot be mounted on the RDA. Okay, that's the official answer that they have right now, and they are asking for everybody that has, evidence of that, photos, stuff like that, to actually go out there and suggest it, or do a bug report, I think, right? Because they are saying that for now, the evidence that they have is that the RDA could not mount a gun pod, which is sad. But yeah, again, guys, just to show a little bit of how much salt you need for that other question about the AESA radar for Sweden, right? For example, here, somebody asked about the iDerby ER, right, for the Spider to help it out, which I honestly think it is. They say it's too soon to go into specific things, and new ordnance may or may not be coming in this major update, so they will cover that in dev streams, dev servers, and everything. So that's why you have to take with a lot of salt there, because he didn't deny it, but this is kind of a normal question that he's saying, right? Again, it's just my hopeful dream that the GripNE will come, because he didn't outright deny it, but yeah, it's a big if, right? So this is kind of the question that they kind of answer. We're way too early in the dev season, like patch season, to actually try to answer those questions anyway, right? But expect, guys, the teaser to come very soon, like this week probably, I would imagine, right? So yeah. He answers another one for the K29 and the MI8 cockpits. So the K29, they are trying to kind of give a priority on the cockpit for that, and the MI8, not this update, okay? So we might see a cockpit for the K29 in this update, but not for the MI8. And in this question and answer over here, he basically just confirms again, guys, the objective is to always add vehicles specifically to the nations that build them. So firstly, at least, right? So the F-18, they were talking about the F-18s, right? So he gives a little bit of an example here. But overall, guys, for example, the F-18. Who built the F-18? Mainly the US, right? So, of course, if an F-18 is coming for the Finnish tech tree, it will first come to the US. That will be the future as well. So, for example, in the future, when we see F-35s, that will be the main directive that they use, right? F-35, it can come for many nations. The first one, or on the very least, the first one together with other ones in the same update will be the US, always. The country that builds them will get them. This normally is true. And that's it, guys. Nothing too crazy. As I said, I think the major thing here is the tech tree ones, the Thor, of course, and maybe something is coming for Sweden. Hopefully it's coming. I think they need it, more than even, if you really think about it. I mean, they have the F-18, but more than the British would need an AESA, the Germans and even the Italians would need an AESA radar-capable aircraft. I think we really need a top-tier jet for the Swedes, right? So it would tackle two things. A 14.3 jet for Sweden and an AESA radar-capable aircraft for Sweden as well. So hopefully it gets added, but it's a hopeful thinking a little bit, okay? So I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, become a member or a patron if you want to help the channel, and join the Discord down in the description. Bye, guys. See ya.